think we're on.
We're live? All right. Well, hey, everybody. It's Tim Sisler and Arthur Solomon with the Solomon Group, and today we're privileged to have Dr. Julius Bailey here. We're going to have an amazing conversation with him. Stay tuned. Hear what we got to say. Arthur, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you guys for tuning in today. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this video. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. Dr. Bailey, he's a living legend. He's done so many things. He was an administrator. He's an author. He's a philosopher. He's a professor at Wittenberg University, a community activist, and maybe a governor in 2022. We'll see what happens. So, sorry, we're just sharing the post real quick. Dr. Bailey, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm grateful to have your presence today here today.
I appreciate you, brother. Good to see you, and good to see you too, man. I'm excited. A little nervous, man. Y'all make me nervous, man, but I'm excited to be here on your show and continue to support all the wonderful things you do for our area.
Likewise. Well, the whole objective of this, we want to talk about the criminal justice reform. I know it's not real estate related, but this is something that I'm passionate about. I know you've dedicated your whole life to criminal justice reform, and we thought maybe you could speak on your experience, maybe talk about Wittenberg and coming to Springfield and your experience so far, and maybe we can dive deep into the criminal justice side.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think when you think about the work that I've done, I think chiefly I come from a background that looks at social justice in a very hands-on kind of way, right? And so I think it was even the Bible that tells you, you got to love and give charity, but it also says to go visit those who are in prison, right? And so for me, understanding the relationship between those who are in prison and the relationship between what society's responsibility is to ensure that the folk don't go to prison becomes sort of a two-pronged kind of way in which I approach things. And so since maybe 2005, I've probably visited 40 or 50 prisons in Illinois, Ohio, and Indiana. And with these visits, generally they're around positive speaking and motivational stuff. And sometimes, because of the nature of who I am, I build relationships with wardens and directors of prisons and have conversations because as you can imagine, over these years, you see changes in the prisons, right? You see some administrations who support the rehabilitation aspect, others who put more money into the corrections aspect. And then what becomes the residual effect of those within prisons becomes something that I'm concerned about. The one thing I always say to those people, to the offenders in there, say, listen, I operate under the understanding that you'll be coming home soon, right? So I need to know that we're doing whatever we can do as a society to get you prepared for release, right?
Yeah, I love the positivity.
Right, what's the positivity there, right? And so I always say, it's what Ludacris had an album called Release Therapy, right?
Okay.
And so we need to be about the release therapy of our inmates. And so that's at that level. I think for me, so to make it very concise, I think my overall philosophy of criminal justice, and especially reform, has to do around three areas. I think one, it is to understand that we as a society need to operate on hope, right, and not fear. I think too many of us fear people. Too many of us fear our own communities, fear our own blocks. Too many of our states and our communities fear its own citizens. And I think we need to operate on hope and not fear. I think the second piece to operate on, as we talked about before, is looking at individuals' potential and their actual skills, right? What are their actual skills and what are their potential skills? But we tend to be too locked into their past, right? And so we can't be a nation, let alone a state, that concerns itself about the welfare of people if we're constantly bringing up the past and not allowing them to serve their time, not allowing them to sort of do their penance, from that perspective, but you're locking into what you might have done. I think thirdly, which all kind of brings it all under one overarching element, is that we need to invest in human capital, right? So you're an investor, y'all know what I'm talking about. We need to invest in human capital as opposed to the mantra around safe streets, right? I'm not against safe streets, but I think about it, I'm a philosopher, right? So I think, what is the veracity of that, right? how safer are you today than you said that term 10 years ago?
Right.
Or 20. You're saying the same things you said 10 or 20 years ago. And meanwhile, you haven't invested in anybody's life. You're just invested in criminal justice, trying to get more police, trying to get more incarceration, trying to get more time, but yet you don't feel more safe or you don't feel less unsafe. You see what I'm saying? So if in fact you aren't reaping what you're at least trying to sow intellectually, it's time to change it. And so that's why most of my life, especially in the last 20 years, have been around trying to create communities to have conversations around reforming criminal justice.
Well, that's kind of where we're going. So can you give me your take on the criminal justice reform that you would like to see in Ohio, some different programs that we can implement today?
Right. No, that's
that would make
question.
a huge difference.
So back when I first came to Ohio, so I've been in Ohio since 2008. Right, I've been in Ohio since 2008, and I've been really working with the state of Ohio since 2010. Right, and so in 2010, I started working both in Cuyahoga County as well as some areas in Montgomery County, working with what we know now is called Ban the Box. Right, and so for about 4 years, I was working, on the ground in communities, doing legislative work, trying to push both in Cuyahoga and in Montgomery, working with those activists and those legislators to do the work in banning the box. Well, we know in 2016, John Kasich did actually sign the Ban the Box bill, which for me, it becomes important. And for brothers and sisters out in Ohio, it becomes important. Other states have done it, but what is Ban the Box if you didn't know? Ban the Box means up until 2016, in the state of Ohio, anybody, especially states, because that's where it ended up going, but anybody who's an employer can ask you, have you ever been convicted of a felony, right? Well, now, because of this bill and because of the work that a lot of hardworking people, and I just kind of joined the bandwagon for 3-4 years, have put forth, now at least the bill that passed in 2016 was that, listen, state and public employers cannot ask that question, right? So right now, if you were to go and apply for a state job, you won't see the question, have you been convicted of a felony, right? That's Ban the Box. Now, obviously, does it have its shortcomings? Sure it does, right? Because then it gives provisions for them to ask you at the point of hiring, well, we're about to do a background check.
Right.
Right? Or they ask, okay, well, obviously it doesn't apply to private companies, right? Which maybe it's right. Maybe a public government shouldn't force private people to do what they want to do in their private businesses. Maybe that's the case. But that's why people like us need to promote to business owners, listen, invest in human capital.
Yeah, and what we were talking about earlier, before we even started this podcast, we were talking about the people who are getting those skills while they're in, in jail. They're the people who are coming out as almost master chefs.
Yes.
These people are highly skilled.
Yes.
And all they need is a chance to prove it outside of the box.
Right. Right. And I'm gonna give, I'm gonna say this, because I'm, those of you who know me from my work at Wittenberg University, I love my institution, right? But I'll put pressure on your alma mater, right? I'll put pressure on them. Look, we have people like myself. We have another philosopher. We have a sociologist. We got a historian. We got an English professor that's doing work in the prisons every day, right? We have a sister in sociology, Brooke Wagner, doing good work with our juvenile justice folk here in Clark County. We got, Lori Asklin, we got Nancy McHugh, we have myself doing work in state prisons across Ohio. When I go into these prisons 15, 20 times a year, and I say, listen, I'm here to work for you, and then they ask me, Professor Bailey, so when I get out, can I holler at you for a job, right? I need to know that I'm doing the work to say I need to help you, right? So if I work at a school that says we're not going to hire ex-offenders, then I feel like I'm being hypocritical, right? And I can't, and these people want people like me to go in there and inspire inmates. But you can't inspire them because they're thinking, I'm trying to speak release therapy. But if they have nothing on the outside to be released to, then that's how you get recidivism. That's how you get lack of morale. So institutions like my university, businesses like you, we were talking about Edwin's in Cleveland, right? Mm-hmm. And we're saying that restaurant is an important restaurant. And there's probably more. I'm just familiar with Edwin's. Edwin's is a high-level French restaurant that also just built a sandwich shop. And they hire exclusively ex-offenders, right? They put their investment in the human capital because one thing, A, they have the skill.
Right.
B, we know they got the time. Right. And see that they need the job and they're used to working. Right.
Sure.
So they've been working 8-10 hours in a joint. Right. So what does it mean to come work? So I think when we have employers, you can't tell me that I can be a janitor at Chillicothe prison for 7 years, but yet I can't work at Wittenberg University in your janitorial department. I've been cleaning floors and cleaning bathrooms. What do you mean I can't work there? You know, I've been doing hosting people and walking visitors like Professor Bailey through the institution, and my warden trusts me to walk across the to walk across the institution and host our guests. But yet I can't be a host at a hotel. Mm-hmm. Yet I can't be a host at a restaurant. Right? So we have to change the mindset, and I think that's what Ban the Box did. Right? Is hopefully, and then I think the second program that I'm proud of that just got passed is the idea around cash bail reform, right? And that becomes sort of a preemptory to prison, right? That means to say I get arrested on June 10th. Now it's July 24th, and I'm still in jail. I ain't got a trial yet.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't know when I'm going to trial because of COVID. You know what I'm saying? And I'm stuck in county jail for months and months. You know, and I have no way out. Right. So now I may have went in on a weed charge. I may have went in on an assault charge like every kid do, getting a fight at McDonald's, right? But now because I don't have $10,000 cash on a $100,000 bond, I'm stuck in the county jail. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just a kid who had a fight. I'm just a 22-year-old that made a mistake when I was drunk or had some weed or some whatever. And now I'm here and I'm stuck. And what do we know that happens? When you get into the prison system, you then have to adapt with prison culture.
Right.
I don't care who you are. And what happens now, you get the kid who's a good kid, the young adult who's a good young adult, who now have to basically live and survive in these type of circumstances, waiting what? On trial. Right? Can't control when a trial is. They don't have the money to buy a good lawyer to push it forward, so they're just waiting. Meanwhile, they have a fight with the inmate. Meanwhile, they got caught up in a situation, you know, trying to protect a friend at the institution. Now they got an internal case, which even if I get found not guilty or charges discharged when I finally go to trial, well, you caught a case in prison, so you still got 3 years. Right? So we have to be so in July of 2020, just passed. The state passed Rule 46. It was some adjustments to Rule 46. Now, Rule 46 is pretty much a national rule. I mean, it's a criminal court rule, right? So in any court in America, if you're watching Law and Order, you'll say, Judge, you want a Rule 46 hearing, right? That kind of thing, right? So what that pretty much says is that, listen, we need to have a conversation about the bail, right? And so when we have a conversation about bail, then the question becomes, well, how much is the bail for this kid? How much is the bail for this woman who was trying to protect her children? How much is the bail for this person who had a fight? Oh, this bail is, $250,000. $25,000? I work third shift at Dairy Queen.
Right. That's wild.
I'm stuck in here over a fight. And what do we know, Solomon? We know she's gonna lose a Dairy Queen job whenever she gets out.
Yeah.
She's gonna probably, and depending on what her children's situation is, she might lose her kids, even if she's found not guilty, because she's been absent from her kids.
Right.
Then let alone whatever the family structure is, male, female, you're gonna lose that. And you're gonna tell me it's worth it, right? So I'm proud of that. We still have a lot of dissenters in Ohio, and so there's a lot of still rules around it. People are worried, well, you just can't let criminals out. Well, we have to change what things mean, right? So, for instance, class 4 and 5 felonies, right? Low-level felonies with drug charges, right? You get a class 4 or 5 felony, up into this, Rule 46 piece, you say, listen, what do we do with that? Well, you have a mandatory sentence of X, Y, and Z, right? Well, we need to be about the business of changing some of those low-level nonviolent drug offenses, changing those into what the state of Ohio calls these sort of statutory sort of unclassified misdemeanors, right? So now the judge has the ability to say, well, you know what? We're going to give you, drug court, or we're going to give you probation. outside of outside of prison, or that kind of thing, right? So because why? And I'll close this, and we can go to the next question. Why? Because I think what we as a society need to understand, going back to my three principles: hope over fear, a potential over past, and human capital over safe streets mantra. I think we have to ask ourselves this: what do we think of when we think of felon? Right? Because again, a felon is a statutory term.
Right.
Right. A felon is a legal term that the state of Ohio could change today. If enough people in the Senate says we're going to change what it means to be a felon, right? Now that changes. But the question is, they can change it through Rule 46. They can change it through ban the box. They can change it through anything that people like me to push forth and other people put forth. But the question is, are they going to change it in your heart? Are they going to change it in your heart? And so until we push people to understand that we need to deal with the human capital of people and the hearts of people, then now the felony that we're checking off, or we're asking the person, have you ever had a felony? Well, now you have people scared to even say yes or no.
Absolutely. For example, so I'm a business owner, and I work with OSC, Bob Mims, and the guys over there. They're great. Like if I'm a business owner and I want to say, I'm listening to the podcast right now and I'm saying to myself, I want to invest in human capital. I want to be a part of the change that I want to see. What resources are available right now here in Clark County and in Ohio to get, for example, I'm in real estate, in construction, all these different things. What can people do now to get connected in my line of business, for example, if I'm an investor or I'm in a construction business? What's the best way to be able to reach the people that are coming out from those kind of situations that need a change?
That's a good question. So I think in many of our counties, you do have some level of sort of ex-offender, sort of avoiding reentry programs, right? You do have some level of those. Montgomery County has a robust one. Clark County has a couple of your halfway houses and those transitional spots and that kind of thing, right? Those obviously are places where human capital can be tapped. We obviously have the OIC of Clark County, that we certainly need to invest more in, and to make sure we invest in the skills of these people so they can have access to them. I think, but really it starts, it really starts with you as a business owner and me as a business owner and me working for institutions to say, listen, I'm making it a fundamental rule that we have to hire certain people, right? So for instance, one of the things that I do in diversity work all the time, I have some challenges with my university, but every university has these challenges. So listen, what mandates are we giving our contractors, right? So you want a $100 million contract. You want a $20 million contract to build this, to build that, to create that. Well, I need to ask you, who are you hiring? Do you have any percentage of ex-offenders? We need to make sure that you have a 2% of ex-offenders. We need to make sure you have 10% of minorities, right? That bid needs to include that. Right? Don't come to me saying, well, we're going to work on it. Wait, work on it, then give me the bid.
Well, could it be an option for them to include that? Because I think in contracting and stuff like that, it's the most important thing is to have the most skilled person for the job. So if someone goes and says, I want to build your roof, here's how much it's going to cost to build your roof. They're more than welcome to include who they hire, who they employ. But what I care about most is someone who's going to hire someone to fix my roof. It's how much skill do you have doing roofs?
No, I agree with you, brother. I think that the roof is, I would consider in this conversation, I would consider the roof as a subcontractor, right? I'm thinking if I'm building a building, right? The roof is just one aspect of it, right? I got the roof, I got the drywall, I got the painting, I got the electricity, I got all that kind of stuff. But in that sense, right, I'm still going to ask the question, well, who is the roofing company you're working with? Are you working with more than one to get the bid in, right? And so even as a subcontractor, I want to know, have you reached out to minority to minority roofing companies? Even if you haven't, okay, that's one conversation. In those roofing companies, I ask the question: do you have a policy as it relates to the recruiting and the hiring of ex-offenders? Are you trying to tell me they can't build nothing for you? And they sit up here across the country, and especially in Ohio, building desks, building tables, building license plates, building cars, and yet they can't build your roof, right? So what do you worry about? They're going to steal some planks? Steal some, what do you worry about, right? So my question is, are we tapping into human potential Are we holding businesses accountable? And then we hold them accountable, I think then we can start seeing the manifestation of a state that invests in human capital. So I think that's what we need to hold our companies accountable. We need to make sure our contracts that we're bidding out to have a bid that is diverse. And diverse means obviously racial and gender and physical ability and maybe sexual orientation, but it also includes ex-offenders. And I think when it comes to reform, we can't sit up here, and this is the last thing I'll say, we can't sit up here and call ourselves the state of Ohio and their Department of Rehabilitation and Correction if there's no R in that conversation. If the R is a little r and a big C, then we're not, when those individuals become ex-offenders, we haven't trained them to be citizens. We haven't trained them to be, sort of re-entry into our society. And that is an indictment of us. That's not an indictment of the inmate. The inmate did their time. The question is, we failed the inmate to prepare the inmate to be ready to come sit in an interview with you.
Right. The rehabilitation piece. So again, how do we, like OIC, is there other organizations that are a part of the rehabilitation piece?
Right. So I'm not familiar with all the names of them. I know I sit in meetings with people who do that, and so I couldn't at this moment quote those organizations. But I do know that they are certainly in Clark County as well as Montgomery County, where I know a little bit more in terms of organizations who have official reentry programs where they include the issues of resume writing, issues of interviewing, questions of how to present yourself, that kind of thing, right? But then more so, you have churches, right? You have some churches, for instance, the church that I administrate in Illinois, we have churches that actually have programs that we get state dollars to make sure that we have ex-offenders on the payroll, right? So when it comes down to how do we move our food, when a food truck comes, when we're giving out food on the weekends or during the week, right? Who's unloading the crates, right? Who's cleaning who's cleaning the areas, right? Who's helping disperse this type of stuff, right? So churches can make that investment as well. And what other place to have that investment in with our churches, right? And so I think that to answer your question again, I think that we need to hold all of us accountable. Where do we fit in this whole thing of society? What access to employment do we have? We may not have our own business, but we work for a company like Wittenberg. We work for a company like the city of Springfield. We work for the Department of Housing. And what are we asking our bosses? Hey, what are we doing? What kind of programs do we have, right? Can I create a sub-program within our department to go work with ex-offenders to make sure they're ready? If we don't have it, let's build it. Right? That's the kind of leadership I think we need at the local level and at the state level. That whatever we don't have as a systematic state program that invests in the human capital of people, it is our job to make it.
I think that's key. Is that going to be one of your main platforms that you'll be running on in 2022?
Platforms that I'm running on. Brother Arthur, man, you're doing too much, man. I think that Ohio certainly demands and expects accountability, proven leadership, and I would argue caring leadership, right? I think when we think of what just happened on Wednesday with the House of Representatives guy, $60 million, just extorting that and bribing that, When we think about stuff and the kind of distrust that's going to continue to create, let alone we got a national government that's impacting our states and this argument over wear a mask, not to wear a mask, are the numbers real, not real? We have citizens who are growingly distrusting of government. Whatever I do in this next election is going to be a conversation of, listen, you can check my track record. You can certainly realize that I'm a trustworthy individual, but I operate out of the heart. I'm not a career politician. I got a good job I'm a seasoned professor. I got awards. I got all this I've written books. This is what I do. I said, I'm here to serve, right? I think it was Plato who says, listen, quite frankly, us philosophers, we don't want to rule, right? I don't want to do this thing, right? But the reality is, who else knows justice? Who else knows love? Who else knows the character of justice, temperance, and courage, right? Than a philosopher. Who else knows how to put people in conversation, left, right, center, around issues that matter and around conversations that have direct impact than a philosopher? So I think, Brother Arthur, I think that when it comes to whatever I do in 2022, I think Ohio can expect that Julius Bailey is going to be a leader that fundamentally cares about the human investment, that cares about the restoration of hope, and that certainly engages in a conversation of your potential. If I am not the kind of person if I'm not the kind of person that invests in leadership, potential, and actuality, then I'm not doing my job, right? Because it was people that invested in the potential of me. It was people that invested in the potential of you. And I don't have the capacity. I'm not hypocritical enough to then avoid or to stave off the investment in other people. So a criminal justice would be something that certainly I'll be talking about. But I'm an educator, right? So I'm very concerned about education. I'm very concerned about workers' rights. I'm very concerned about the ways in which we create wages and how wages affect poverty and how poverty is linked to education and how cyclical poverty then adversely affects the soul of a city and the soul of a state, right? So I'm working this. Whatever I do in 2020 is about reaching the heart and the soul, right? I'm going to let the politicians do what the politicians do. They're going to sell y'all a bill of goods. They're going to throw some money your way. But then there's going to be a voice out there that's going to say, what about this issue that affects the spirit and the soul of what you're doing in every state from Toledo and Lima on down to, to Cincinnati, on a cross here to Dayton, way up there, in Sandusky. What is the soul of our state? What Julius Bailey is going to try to put forward is trying to speak to the soul of Ohio.
Wow. Guys, this guy is a mover and a shaker. I think I want to mention one other thing, though. You had told me you've been trying to set up a couple appointments with some representatives to talk about some of these important ideas. This stuff that we're talking about, this stuff needs to be talked about. And you had threw around a couple names. Kyle Kohler, you've been trying to meet with him, and Jim Jordan. So if you guys are watching, reach out to Dr. Bailey. I think we need to have some conversations.
I think so. I mean, obviously, Kyle, he's my representative, right? And so, I respect, him as our representative. I thank him for the work that he's done. But there are some fundamental issues that I have with some of the decisions that he's made since I've been here in Springfield. And I'm concerned about that as it relates to, especially not exclusively, but as it relates to women, as it relates to minority communities. I'm concerned about that. And so I would like to, I've tagged Kyle. I've called his office. I've put him on Twitter and Facebook blast. Meet me. I'll meet you at the church. I'll meet you in the corner.
Right.
I'll meet you wherever you want to. You can come to Wittenberg. He was just at Wittenberg for our opening of the steamer, right? And my president, I ain't gonna tell you, but people like, leave him alone. I'm like, I need to go holler at him. You know what I'm saying? So him, but quite frankly, I think the person that I think I would love to sit down with is Jim Jordan. I think that, he is our respective senator. He is a mover and a shaker for real. I think that if I can look into his eye, if I can get him to know who Julius Bailey is, even though I know there's party differences and all that old crazy stuff. Again, I'm operating not on party politics. I'm operating on soul and heart. And I believe that the heart of Jim Jordan, and I believe that talking to a Julius Bailey can reach the heart. And just like the word says, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And so that's what a Julius Bailey candidacy would mean. And to meet with powerful people like them is going to be something that's going to sort of define what my candidacy would be.
Well, you got a lot of powerful ideas. That's all the questions I got, Tim.
No, I mean, I think we covered it all, man. It was nice meeting you.
You too, brother. You too, brother.
Dr. Bailey, any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to thank y'all for what you're doing. I watch the investments that you do, the housing that you do. Obviously, this podcast, we're talking about all type of business and social matters. Sort of reminds us, in what Ohio can be, right? You have people who are business people who are certainly not just concerned about, the creation, sort of capitalistic creation of dollars. Yes, they're concerned about that, but how dollars are invested and reinvested.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's what I come to the table with, and that's why I align myself with you, not just because you're an alum of my institution and I got to be cool with you. Fly the W, tiger up, that kind of stuff. But no, but I think it's because I see your heart and I see the work that you do and the work that you do. So when I watch your podcast, when and when I watch you every day working on behalf of Springfield and Beaver Creek in this area, I know that there are hundreds of Tims and Arthurs across the state, and I want to connect with those folks.
Absolutely.
And I want to be a part of the work they're doing so that I can help you and you can help me to tap into the potential and the actual human investment and human capital. So
Amen.
Thank you for this time.
Yeah,
Definitely appreciate it. And you can find Dr. Bailey. He's got his own podcast, Straight No Chaser with Dr. Bailey. I think you can have Dr. Cornell West on August 3rd.
Cornell West to be on August 3rd. Eddie Glaude, who we see on MSNBC, the chair of African American Studies at Princeton, he'll be on August 10th. We have an important conversation coming up this Monday with the fellow Witt alum, Shakir Abdullah. He used to play football, was our former Board of Trustee member. Now he's a vice president of student affairs at Clayton State in Georgia. He'll be on Monday talking about issues of diversity in higher education. So my podcast is Mondays and Wednesdays, 11 a.m. If you're on Facebook, a Straight No Chaser with Dr. Julius Bailey. If you're on YouTube, just subscribe to Dr. Julius Bailey channel. Obviously, I'm just proud to be here at this studio. I'm gonna have some conversation with Brother Eric, and who knows, whatever official announcement I might make might happen right here at this desk. Who knows? But I thank all of you. I thank you.
We definitely appreciate your time, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Solomon Hustles.